In 2018, the Vietnam Red Cross and German Red Cross started the FBF Ready project to reduce the adverse effect of heat waves on Hanoi's most vulnerable population. Heat wave events are associated with a 20% increase in hospital admissions for all causes and 46% for respiratory diseases. The forecast-based financing methodology, known as FBF Ready, will use forecasts provided by the Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology and Climate Change, known as IMHEN, to predict the onset of heat waves, mobilize funding before a heat wave begins, and take anticipatory measures or early actions to lessen the impact of heat wave upon its arrival. This is the first forecast-based financing project to be implemented on heat waves and in urban context.
The FBF approach follows a 7-step process that allows the Red Cross to assess the risks and defining forecasts in order to develop triggers for early actions and to react before the disaster strikes. In the first year of implementation, the project focused on Step 1 and Step 2 of the approach, which are risk assessment and identification of forecasts.
The launching workshop brought together a broad coalition of stakeholders, including representatives from Vietnamese government and United Nations agencies, international and domestic non-governmental organizations, and fellow Red Cross societies. VNRC leadership was also present, as was district and city-level Red Cross staff.
Cái mục tiêu chính của chúng ta ở đây chính là cái quy trình chuẩn SOP. Và cái quy trình chuẩn này dựa trên cái giả thuyết tình huống để nắng nóng.
FBF is a disaster relief strategy with the greatest emphasis on science and research. The climate risk assessment conducted by IMHEN shows that the frequency and duration of heat wave events have increased in the past 30 years and are projected to further increase in the future, with the urban center being hotter than the rural areas. The FBF is also a community-based approach. As part of the risk assessment step, the FBF Ready project has conducted an extensive knowledge, attitudes, and practices or CAP survey throughout Hanoi to collect data about the current capacities of vulnerable groups to cope with heat waves, as well as their level of awareness about the occurrence and impacts. The survey targeted elderly people, slum dwellers, builders, shippers, and street vendors.
Nắng nóng thì cảm tưởng nó khổ thì mình phải chịu đựng cái nào san sẻ cùng ai được. Thì múc nước vào giường để dấp nước xoa cho nó đỡ mát thôi, còn thì chả làm nào được.
Nóng lắm, các cô đi chợ về không chả chịu được. Đi chỉ một tí đi là phải về vô bóng cây bóng cối làm chi này. Nên các cô vất lắm. Người nó mệt lắng, mệt nhọc thì nó không ngủ được, cái ra chợ nó mệt. Nó tã cả người ra mệt.
The survey shows that 66% of vulnerable groups have experienced 4 to 6 symptoms of heat exhaustion during heat waves. About a third of them have their income significantly reduced, while the cost for healthcare to deal with symptoms is equivalent to 1.5 to 2.5 of their daily income. The majority of vulnerable groups adopt key measures to better adapt to very hot weather. However, only 24% can recognize the signs of heat-related illnesses, and only 7% stay in air-conditioned places as a way to cope to heat. Local forecasts provided by IMHEN have been supplemented by maps to identify areas most likely to host the largest population of people most vulnerable to an extreme heat event. VNRC's staff were trained to produce those maps and identify areas for implementation of early action. 3 layers of data were used. First is the vulnerability of the affected population, such as the percentage of elderly people, disabled, and children under 5 per ward. The second is the population's exposure to the heat wave, such as the percentage of people living in slums without air conditioning. And the third is the urban heat islands layer provided by IMHEN. By combining these 3 layers of information, The implementation areas can be selected.
In 2019, the results of different risk assessment that we have conducted, science-based and community-based, will be the basics for developing a theory of change for each target group and for selection of well-adapted early actions and the development of early actions protocol for heat wave. The map developed will allow us to identify implementation area where the most vulnerable groups are living. These are the step 4 and 5 of the FBF methodology. The FBF Ready project builds capacity for VNRC from analysis to activation where a trigger of heat wave will be reached.